Talk about courage over comfort. Great message, too. And she does the back room, too, and she does all the technical stuff, and wow. Wow. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is John Boyle, and I'm a licensed practitioner here, and today's Practitioner Sunday. And let's see, our lesson today is titled, Developing a Healing Consciousness. Now, what does that mean? You may be asking yourself, well, I'm not really suffering from anything. I don't need to be healed. I'm fine. You know, I took a class a few months ago, taught by Crystal Lively, and it was called the Mystical Path. And I picked up a different perception of what it means to suffer. You see, what the mystics tell us is that suffering is any time we're not in harmony with that truth, with the divine within us. And so when we're suffering, what does that require? Anybody? Healing, right? So it kind of gave me a different perspective. I always thought of suffering as something catastrophic, you know, like some kind of bodily injury or maybe some sort of ailment or losing a loved one or what happens when I tick my wife off. Now that's suffering. But what it is that suffering happens when we allow ego to lead the way for us. And what does ego stand for? Edging God out. Exactly. So, and when we are living a egocentric life, there's this undercurrent of worry and fear and doubt and the inside feelings that we might have and emotions don't always match what we project outside. So we don't really express the freedom of who we truly are authentically. That's what happens when we live an egocentric type life. So what I know is this: whenever I lead with ego, I'm going to be on a rough ride. It's going to be up and down because I place my beliefs on a foundation that's not solid, right? And so, so the question is, how do we move out of that consciousness? And so if I could have the first slide, Trevor. You got it. Thank you. So that's Albert Einstein. We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. You've heard that before, right? Sure. Well, I made a little change. Could I see the next slide? And that one should read, if it's, yes, okay, good. We can't solve problems by being in the same aspect of consciousness we were in when we created them. Right? Blows pretty good. I was proud of myself on that one. Okay. So then the next slide, let's see what we got. No, not that one. Yeah, that'll work. That does it. So what if you start taking classes, the new curriculum, this is steeped. These four aspects of consciousness are steeped in all of the classes. So I thought it'd be good to really present that today. So what we're going to do is each one of the practitioners behind me are going to take one of those levels, one of those aspects of consciousness and describe it and go through it. And then at the end, I'm going to kind of summarize it all and see how we can put it to practice. And so what I'd like to do now is to invite and welcome Crystal Lively up to give her portion of the presentation.
Thank you, John. So today I get to share with you the first stage or state of consciousness, victim or to me consciousness. But first, I wanted to say, do you realize how wonderful this place is? I mean, I came here 10 years ago when my husband of over 25 years decided he was no longer interested in marriage. I was exhausted from being a mom of 2 special needs boys with disabilities, and I was having my own health issues and situations. And now I get to stand here, share with you some of the things I've learned here and studied about of science of mind. And I have a man in my life that I met here at the center that loves me better than I've ever been loved before. And I have my boys are now out on their own, and I'm a budding empty nester. And Spirit continues to bring me ways and things that supports my intention of vibrant health. So thank you. Thank all of you for creating this environment. And I wanted to say that to me, this sure sounds like a story of a place that's inspired me, empowered me, and transformed me. So I'm so grateful. So this story is also an example of some victim consciousness. Did you hear it in there? My husband left me. I have 2 children with disabilities. This life is sucking the energy out of me. My health is not allowing me to do what I want. I can't pursue my career dreams. So I think I can confidently say that I've taken what I've learned here at the Center for Spiritual Living and grown and developed through the stages and the states of consciousness, and it's allowed me to bring a life that I've always dreamed of into my world. So let me share a little bit more about victim consciousness, because that's what John asked me to do. But he also asked me to give you an example, so there you go. I crawled in here. So it's important to remember that this is not a linear process, that it is more of it's not really a stage of consciousness, it's more of a state of consciousness. And so victim consciousness is life is doing something to me, it's just getting me. And, what is this it? It might be God, it might be the devil, it might be your parents, it might be DNA, it might be like a negative aspect of your astrological chart, or, it might be the cosmic tumbler is just not falling into place, or I was born on the wrong side of the tracks. And often victim consciousness is influenced by race consciousness and by popular beliefs and popular reactions. And usually you're not thinking for yourself. You're not really using creative thought of your own. Your prayer life and your spiritual practices are often erratic. They might even go a little bit towards like beseeching and, begging prayers and pleading and asking for forgiveness, seeking love from an angry God or universe. And many times the spiritual practices from the state of victim consciousness can actually be tied to superstitions, like seeking to win the favor from an external God and that you're just not in control of the situation. So if victim consciousness is running you, you're often very successful at failing. Your habits that might keep you from evolving are things like gossip and blaming and fear and worry. You'll project unresolved issues out into the future like it's just gonna be bad. Scarcity, not enough. And then there's just something just out to get me. And you can be easily manipulated from people that seem to have power. So much of your resources and energies are used up in coping, defense mechanisms, instead of creative energy. And your life just kind of cycles. There's like no opportunity to grow or evolve. You're just living from reaction to reaction. And some common behaviors are compulsive, like overeating, watching TV, smoking, drinking, shopping, but usually not life-enhancing. So you might buy things that you don't need just to be part of something popular, because you're not thinking for yourself. Many victims repeat reactions that are already going on. I think we can see that out there right now. These behaviors and these habits prevent us from feeling the fear and the pain. So there's also self-righteous blame, and it's like the very undercurrent of victimhood. Every victim has a powerful "they did it to me" story, a very powerful blame story. You can ask a victim, why aren't you happy? Or why haven't you kind of evolved past this? Or why are you not successful? Why aren't things going right for you? And immediately there's usually a story of, something else is the cause and it's not their fault. So all of this influences your body and your mental health. And victims often have anxiety, even when nothing is apparently wrong. So you can easily pick up the worries of the world, the sadness, the doubts, and the fears of the world. Victims live under the vibration of fear. But this is not truly your lot in life. Remember that you're a spiritual being having a human experience. And I'm sure you've heard that the universe will push you to grow until your vision pulls you to grow. So victims just don't see that self-responsibility. They don't have dominion over their own attention. They aren't pulled by a vision. And they're not living under the vibration of inspiration and not hearing that small, still voice of intuition. Victims can't hear this voice because of the constant chatter of something else is to blame, and it's never going to change. But these individuals don't realize that they already possess what is required to activate their co-creative powers, to positively impact their life, and to catch the vision of the next step in their evolutionary process. So with a moment of awareness, there's an opening to a deeper inquiry and more availability to new ways of responding to life. Identifying the ways in which victimhood has a foothold in your consciousness is a path to breaking through and realizing a greater expression of yourself. And I found this quote from Ernest, says, "Each state of consciousness taps the same source, but has a different receptivity. Each receives what he asks for, according to his ability to embody it." So some spiritual practice that might support you moving from me consciousness and evolving into a higher state of consciousness are just increasing your awareness. And you can do that with self-inquiry and reflection. For, like example, a guided meditation. You could have a practitioner session. You could sit quiet with yourself and just ask yourself questions and listen with compassion to what arises. And journaling with or without prompts. Michael Beckwith says, "Our life direction is informed by the questions we ask. When we ask meaningful questions, the universe responds with meaningful answers." So once you have some answers, once you have some awareness of your victim habits, you can use forgiveness to release your victim stories. Self-forgiveness foremost, and then others as the practice evolves and unfolds. Affirmations, and then, of course, knowing the greater truths, like all is one. There is not a separate other affecting your world. And I can choose. You have choice in the situation. And life mirrors back to us our beliefs in our life. So earlier I shared my story about when I first arrived here and now, but don't think I don't still hop on the victim train once in a while. For example, when John took this idea he had and he said it was time for Practitioner Sunday again, he shared his vision and his outline with the practitioners so we could pick what part would be our part. And I wasn't there that day. So when I got the list to pick my choice, there was like 1 or 2 spots. So I was like, so great, I got the first part of the lesson. Who wants to go first? Who wants to talk about victim consciousness? So, hey, I did start to play the part from the start. And I jumped right into victim and to me, even in the process of choosing this part of Practitioner Sunday. So I venture to say that I go in and out of it all day, but the mindfulness that you can create and just the understanding it's not a linear process. You will do this thing, this dance with spirit, and you become more aware and you can have a choice to evolve into a higher state. So, and one last quote I'd like to share with you is from Ernest again. We all have a starting point, our mind, our consciousness, and from this point all must travel. The advance in science, art, literature, and all endeavor is an outward and then inward swing of consciousness. What we become aware of, we can master. And since no man can set any limit to the measure of a man's mind, there can be no limit other than the confines we set ourselves. Thank you, Ernest. So let's hear what Sandy has to say about consciousness by me. Thank you.
I'm Sandy Golke, good morning. I'm Sandy Golke, a practitioner emeritus here at the center, and I'm here to introduce you to kingdom number 2. Kingdom number 1 has not been a very happy place, and we have the opportunity to grow beyond it. In stage 1 or kingdom 1, we may get to the place where we ask, is this all there is? There must be something better. Well, through learning and expanding our consciousness, we shift and find that there's a process that we go through back and forth between these kingdoms. And in kingdom number 2, we discover that we are creative and we can make choices in our life. We have power to manage our life. And we can release that false belief that we're powerless victims. In Kingdom 2, we learn to release blame, shame, and guilt, and grow beyond victim consciousness. We start to value integrity and truth, and we feel empowered by being able to be accountable for our actions and our thoughts and what we speak. In Kingdom 2, we become aware that we have an inner self, and we develop that faith in good and in God. And we become aware of our inner power and peace. We understand that God is within us, and there's a law of mind that responds to whatever it is that we think, whatever it is that we speak. And it is this process that creates the life that we live. We embrace the truth that I can live better, that I can make choices, and we gradually gain self-confidence and choose over the comfort from doing things the way we've always done them. We're willing to do something different. We begin to see the world through dualistic eyes. We see good, and we still see things that we judge as bad. We often express, I think it should be done this way. Well, gradually we learn not to get stuck in that belief that we know better. Always there are possibilities different than what we might think. Our new dialogue becomes, I can change the way I look at things. I am not a victim of the outside world. In Kingdom 2, we begin noticing that people in the world just might be for us. We find people are willing to help us, and eventually we may discover that we can even ask for help. This is living in Kingdom 2. This is by me, by my consciousness of a wider and a broader spectrum of what life is all about. We enrich our lives. And we may attend workshops or classes, and in those, we may begin spiritual practices by using tools such as affirmations, visualization, and goal and intention setting. And we may be introduced to meditation for the first time. We become inspired to express joy and love. And we see ourselves in this new light. We get acquainted with this more truer vision of who we really are. We learn that our thoughts and beliefs create our life, and we can choose them wisely. We have a lot of thoughts that just reoccur automatically, but in Kingdom 2, we learn to notice what thoughts we're having, and then to rethink how we might restate them, re-believe about them, and therefore create something new. We are a creative being when we're in Kingdom number 2. Well, just recently, I found myself hanging out in Kingdom 2 consciousness. My daughter had fallen. She was carrying a box at night. She tripped over a rake. She fell on her upper arm on cement, and she seriously broke it. Well, all my life, I've been in the medical profession. And so from the get-go, I knew how things should go. Ha, ha, ha. So in May, she tripped over the box. And then just in August, she had surgery. That was 3 months later. There are many detours in this process of going to doctor and figuring out what needs to be done. And oh yeah, there's another test, et cetera, et cetera. And all along I kept saying, and out loud and inwardly, I know it should be done this way. Well, that didn't make it happen that way. I was stuck in fear. I was asking myself, when would her arm be fixed? Is damage being done in all this time of waiting? Well, I prayed through our affirmative prayer or science of mind treatment. I was in Las Vegas for 6 weeks, helping with her tasks and her comfort care. And I felt fearful. I felt exhausted. I felt worried. And I had a lot of noisy mind chatter. I needed comfort too. Well, I would tell my friends how she was doing, blow by blow, telling them all the details of how it should be different. I recognized that each time I told that story, I was in Kingdom number 1, victim consciousness. So with a higher consciousness, I could have just simply said, she's healing every day. And that would be the truth. And that would be in a higher consciousness that would free how I'm feeling, and it would be open to greater change and the peace in moving through whatever was meant to be. Through all this, I was also in stage 3, because in stage 3, which is through me, and you'll hear about that soon, I absolutely knew that the intelligence of God is in the middle of all things, that all things happen through divine action and timing. So I'd like to turn the stage over to our next speaker, who will tell you about Kingdom Consciousness number 3. Thank you.
It just occurred to me that 3 is my favorite number. It just hit me. Spirit can only do for us what it can do through us. Ernest Holmes. I love quotes, and it just seems that's the most appropriate one to start with as we walk through the co-creative process. Irma Bombeck in 1979 was asked, would you change anything about your life if you could? And she said, no, life's good. But she came back and she had a list of things that she would change. And one of them really stood out to me, and this was long before I had children. The one that stood out was, instead of wishing away 9 months of pregnancy and complaining about the shadow over my feet, I'd have cherished every moment of it and realized that the wonderment growing inside me was to be my only chance to assist God in a miracle. I assisted God in a few miracles myself, and I loved that co-creation process. I'm a researcher, and every day I'd ask, what are we doing now? What are we doing today? Are we growing ears? Let's make some really good ears for this kid. But when I went back to this quote recently, there was a word that's, that's okay. There was a word that stood out to me, and I don't know if you heard it, but it was like a kick to the chest for me. Only. This is my only chance to assist God in a miracle? I guess it depends on what you consider to be a miracle. So, when I hear the call of co-creative consciousness, I don't always feel ready or capable or even worthy of that journey. And it feels like it's going to take a miracle to get me there. But I recognize that call, I know it, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's not going to go away. So to prepare myself, I look at how others have used the process. Wally Amos said, "Famous Amos was not my idea. It was God's idea. I just heard it." To me, that said, be open. And when you hear that soft, small voice, and you can differentiate between ego and God, that's when the magic happens. That's the invitation to step into that co-creative process. Sarah Blakely, who created Spanx. Anybody familiar with Spanx? Yeah. I saw an interview with her. She was terribly unhappy with her job, and she wrote in her journal, "I want to create a product that will serve millions of people and change lives. Universe, give me an idea, and I promise I will not squander it." And 2 years later, she cut the feet out of her control top pantyhose. And 20 years later, she has a billion-dollar corporation. So that to me says, ask for what you want, and then surrender to the journey. Finally, my personal story. 7 years ago, I felt a lump. And I knew what it was instantly. No words, no big dramatic fanfare. I just knew, and I was alone, and it was just intuitive, and this was prior to an official diagnosis. I knew what it was. But the words I did hear were mine. And instantly I said, okay, God, let's go. Let's go. A year after that, I stood on this stage after surgeries and 12 weeks of chemo and 30 days of radiation and all this treatment and healing and using every holistic friend I had. And I announced that the doctors found that I was NED, which stands for no evidence of disease. And in the breast cancer community, there's a saying, no one walks alone. And when I heard that for the first time, I knew I was not walking alone. I was in partnership with Spirit. So, how many opportunities do we have to assist God in a miracle? I guess it depends on your definition of miracles. Yeah. So I want to bring it back to Wally Amos. He found himself needing to leave Famous Amos. This idea that he had from God, the thing that he was told to do. And in an interview after that, he said, God is the source of everything in life. I literally said to myself, if God gave me the idea for Famous Amos, surely he will give me another one. That understanding has helped me move forward. It also helps to look back on founding Famous Amos and say, I did that. And if I did that, I can do it again. So I want to remind you that this co-creative process is not exclusive to kids. Cookies, control top pantyhose, and cancer. You can use it for anything you want. So I'm curious how many miracles you have left. Are you ready to move into stage 4 and see how it works as me?
Okay, I want to make it clear. I did not actually choose this. It chose me. This the last one. So life happens as me. It is a good one. This is where the last remnants of any thought of separation completely dissolves. All is truly one. We become transparencies for God consciousness, conduits for the energy of God to move through us, eliminating any thoughts of worry or fear. How wonderful is that? We become a tool for God's light to shine. That's the ultimate. We move from knowing the truth to being the truth. So it's not just knowing and the studies and the learning and the hearing and all of that. I mean, that's great. And that helps move us. But it's being. It's the being the truth. And that's a little different. We are actually a living prayer. So we don't take time aside. It's not where prayer is a ritual. Prayer is an ongoing way of living. Our intents. I want to read this because I think it's better that way. It suggests that instead of prayer being a separate ritual or practice, our lives themselves become an expression of sacred intent, love, and presence. Every action we take is infused with intention, mindfulness, and a sense of reverence for life. Now, spiritual masters have conveyed this idea. Various mystics from many different countries, from different teachings, conveyed the idea, but their teachings were often misinterpreted because people can only understand them from their current level of consciousness or awareness. Doesn't that make sense? I thought so. That's why I said it. Okay. Okay, so I had this idea. I kind of took on what Reverend Kathy did. I kind of followed that, and I asked AI a question. And so the question is, if one is in the aspect of consciousness of life happens to me, which is the victim, right? What would their reaction to their political candidate losing a national election be? You want to hear it? Okay. Their reaction would likely be rooted in feelings of powerlessness and frustration. They may feel like life is unfair or that the system is rigged against them, blaming external forces for the outcome. There might be a sense of helplessness, thinking that no matter what they do, they have no control over the situation. They could experience deep disappointment, anger, or frustration, often seeing the loss as a personal setback. The outcome feels like something that happened to them, affecting their sense of security or control over life. They may direct the blame towards specific groups, the political system, or even themselves for the loss. This could create feelings of resentment or bitterness towards those they perceive as responsible. They might worry excessively about the negative consequences of the election result, feeling that their candidate's loss will lead to negative outcomes that are beyond their control. Now, I ask the same question if somebody was in the as-me consciousness. If someone is in the life happens as me aspect of consciousness, their political candidate loses an election, their reaction would likely be more detached, centered, than someone who views life through a more ego-driven state. They would accept the result as part of the larger flow of life without taking it personally or feeling defeated. Since they see life as happening through them, they would not perceive the loss as something external, affecting them directly, but rather as part of an unfolding collective consciousness. Rather than blaming the system or others, they might reflect on how the outcome is a reflection of the collective consciousness or energies at play. They might ask, what can I learn from this? Or how can I continue to contribute positively? They would let the loss, they wouldn't let the loss create inner turmoil because they recognize their own power. And purpose is not dependent on external outcomes. They see themselves as creators of their reality, and their well-being isn't tied to any specific results. They have compassion for others who are upset by the outcome, understanding that the emotions of disappointment or frustration are natural. At the same time, they may encourage a broader perspective, seeing the election as part of a larger journey. Their reaction would be aligned with a deeper sense of purpose and unity. I had to share that. I know we're running a little bit long, but I wanted to share that because I think it gives us a target, doesn't it? It gives us something to really glom onto, to really think about how we react in these upcoming days and to any situation, really. And so I want to go into a summary here. The Conscious Leadership Group estimates that 97% of people spend 90% of their time in the first two aspects of consciousness. I'm going to read that again. 90% of people spend 90% of their time in the first two aspects of consciousness. And those are egocentric levels, right? So what does it take to move from one state of consciousness to another? And I know each of the practitioners have talked about, using different tools that we have, mindfulness and spiritual, doing meditation and spiritual mind treatment, etc. I'm not going to go there. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to be willing to let go in each of these stages, if you really look at it. And I look at it kind of like as a kid doing the monkey bars, remember the rings? You get up and you, I know with my kids when they were first learning, they go and they grab the ring like this, and then they hang there and then they drop, right? Because they're afraid to reach out for the next ring, right? So then finally they get to the point where they reach out to the next ring, and then what happens? They fall again because they learn that they have to move a little differently. And then they let go, and then they grab the next ring, and so on and so forth. That's how I look at these different stages. Life happens to me. You have to be willing to let go of being a victim. You have to be willing to let go of blaming. Life happens by me. You have to be willing to let go of control, right? You got to be willing to let go of that control. Exactly. Life happens through me. In order to move to the next level, you have to be willing to let go of separation, the idea of separation. It's all just playing on the playground. Spiritual monkey bars, right? So, let's see. I'd love to say that I spend all of my waking hours and life happens as me, but that would not be true. We move in and out of these states. And sometimes if I'm golfing, I move in and out of the states rapidly. But, we might be basking in the sense of oneness that everything with everything, and then someone we love gets injured, and all of a sudden we're back into victim. And I think Sandy really explained that well. We move in and out. All of us do. The focus is, though, how can I live above that line, above that egocentric living? How can I make my life, create a life that's God-centered? Because I know that when I lead with ego, I'm in for a rough ride. Ultimately, our goal is to be as spiritually awake as possible. And at this center, we have dedicated people that have been dedicated to this teaching and are dedicated to assist you in your journey of awakening. And here's what I really, really believe. The more we pray together, treat for each other, we are raising the collective consciousness of our center. And so I want you to be clear that after every service, practitioners are available. They're here. And I think we all need healing at different times, right? And we are readily available for you. Take it, do it, because by doing that, you're not only raising your consciousness, you're raising our consciousness as well. We remember ourselves. We start remembering the truth of who we are. And it raises the collective consciousness of the center, because I want to be part of that 3% and increase the 3% instead of the 97% that are living in an egocentric life. And so to finish, which aspect of consciousness is currently ruling your reality? There's only one. Namaste.